quote that says, make moves out of inspiration instead of desperation. Make moves out of inspiration instead of desperation. And throughout my life, I've moved a lot on inspiration. There are times in my life I've moved on desperation as well. And what I've learned is that inspiration comes through creativity, through setting clear goals, through being mindful and being present in the moment. And desperation is ego-driven. It's a lack of self-worth. It's a impatient space. And I just want to remind you to be inspired. Inspiration is everywhere. And I want to share a couple times in my life where I moved on inspiration. I was reflecting on it, where it just kind of happened all over the course of about 2 to 3 months. I remember in 2014, I was a school teacher and I was teaching in my fashion merchandising class. We put on an event. It was a fashion show, and it was the second year that we did the fashion show. And I remember the assistant principal talked about how the revenue from that show, how it was almost equivalent to a football game. It was a massive event. My students loved it. I loved it. It was empowering. It was inspirational. The music was there. The energy was there. The community came out. The students showcased. It was everything. Everything that I loved about being a teacher. Everything I loved about empowering my students. And it was the second year that we did it. And I never forget when that school year ended, someone came to me and said, "You're worth more." I had been making $30,000 for 6 years, or actually 8 years of my teaching career. I had never had a raise and never thought twice about it because I was doing everything that I love. I like being a teacher. I like empowering and inspiring my students and igniting that fire within them to be the best version of themselves. And that's really what type of teacher that I was. And so at the end of that school year, I never forget, in 2014, I had no plans of leaving. I actually was ready for the next event. We were already like, "Ms. Dean, how are we going to do this? It was just so many ideas at that point. It's like, okay, let's make this an annual event." And when that person came to me and said, "You're worth more," I went across the border, which was to another county, and immediately I got hired for the same position, teaching fashion merchandising and financial literacy as a family consumer science teacher. And immediately I had like a $5,000 increase, and they actually were giving raises in that county. And I did that, and I put my resignation in my school in that county. And about 2 weeks later, after I accepted that position and got an immediate $5,000 raise, family members, my mentors, dear to me, came and shared with my husband and I this idea about MLM. It was an MLM opportunity that they were just sharing to our family that they had come into, and the idea to move out of the state to Maryland. Again, moving out of inspiration, not desperation, but it was like, oh, Maryland. I started looking at the positions, how much money those teachers made, and the opportunities to live with them and save some money. I'm like, let's go. So it was another move for me of inspiration. I had a job offer already making more money, but then I started looking at Maryland, like how we could do this, and the goals were clear. I was living that present moment, and I was just ready. And so I took another leap of faith and moved through inspiration and took that job and doubled my income. And I say this to say again, making moves out of inspiration is so important. And unfortunately, I think we see too many desperate moves. We see too many moves made out of like struggle or trauma or just being so unhappy to the point we can't take it anymore. And all those things sometimes do happen. But I would say most importantly, make moves out of inspiration. I was talking to a young lady recently about how to let go of a friendship without it being a bad breakup or a bad transition or a bad move. And life doesn't have to be bad. Oftentimes the fears that are placed in our head are things that we think are going to happen. They don't even happen. It's our fears, it's our patterns, our behaviors, and our experiences that make us think that. And I truly believe it's just a progression of evolution and the opportunity and the abundance that waits for us. So I would tell you and anyone, and this is, I Am is the channel, this is our platform. If you are new here, this is an educational, inspirational space for particularly young women in their 20s to understand that this decade is very valuable. Making these type of moves early really sets you up for just more continual growth in your later decades. You can start at any place in your life. I've started at many decades, things later, but in my 20s, I definitely made some intentional choices, and I did make some moves. Although those moves I made, I just shared with you, were in my 30s. I will say this too, and I've shared this with people, like, be present. I think inspiration comes in the present moment. And although I was only making $30,000 for 8 years, that was a major part of my journey because I showed up every day to those students the best that I knew how. I wanted to show up and inspire them. They didn't know how much money I was making. I wasn't complaining. I wasn't sitting in the teacher's lounge talking to the teachers that were ready to retire or that were new and just frustrated. I cultivated my mind with my own thoughts and the things that I wanted for my students, and the teachers that I did have that were supportive. I made sure that's who I spoke to. So being present is very important, because that's where inspiration comes from, and choosing your community wisely, no matter what career you're in, no matter what season you're in. Your presence is a gift, and the only way that you can unfold it, unwrap it in a very joyful way, or in a place that allows growth, be around the people who inspire you. Inspiration is so important. It is everywhere. You walk outside, I can look at the birds and be like, okay, if they're soaring, Janville, you can do something else. Go a little extra mile, run faster, slow down and walk. Look at the butterflies fluttering around, beautiful, changing colors, transitioning. Find inspiration however you need to. There will be times we may have to make moves out of desperation, but I believe those are far and few between when we live out of inspiration, who we're created to be. So again, inspiration comes from setting clear goals, being present in the moment. These things are so important. Setting clear goals, being present, and knowing what you want, knowing what you want. What do I like? What do I value? What do I want in this moment? These things will allow us to move. Being creative, keeping that creative. Oftentimes we think creativity looks like, an art picture or something magical. Creativity is just an idea that you have. Choosing what's best for you, that's creative. Not taking the blueprint that's been given to you and duplicating it. Creativity means I'm going to go left when everybody's going right. That's creative, and taking that step will lead you to more steps. So creativity, being present, and setting clear goals are ways to make moves out of inspiration. So I hope this just inspired you to continue to show up and be the best version of yourself. Choose your higher self and do it in love. I'm always going to go back to love, because I believe that's the root of everything. How we choose to love ourselves is how we choose to live this life in a loving way. So stay creative, stay present, and set those goals. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.